Women need to be put in their place.
You can't be back in like walking on eggshells, dancing around, beating around the bush all the time. To me, that sounds more strong, has more strength behind it than...
It's definitely a more leading phrase. I'm not going to continue this conversation.
Yeah.
That's not even saying like, I'm not going to allow this or whatever. That I'm not going to continue until we can talk to each other in a respectful way. I mean, I guess the most controversial thing going on our stuff is that a lot of women are agreeing that women need to be put in their place, which I did see someone say that the verbiage of that was a little interesting, but I'm like, okay, I could see her perspective, but I also know that that's not how you meant it. But there are men that would use that verbiage who do just like want to put down women. But I know that's not what you meant. You explained it where that's not what you meant.
Yeah, putting in place and putting down is not the same thing. But but also as a man, you also have to use strong verbiage. You can't be back in like walking on eggshells, dancing around, beating around the bush all the time, right? I mean, you got to be kind and considerate, but you can't be afraid to say what you got to say.
Well, I saw a woman in the comments too actually put it really well that her husband, I guess she was talking to her husband and it wasn't in a loving way or respectful way, and he just stopped the conversation and was like, "We don't talk to each other like that."
Yeah.
And that I feel like was the perfect example
that's a good
of
example.
how to do it. You know, it's not mean, it's not belittling, but it's forceful and it's I like too that she mentioned, and then hopefully he said it this way, like using we. Like that also feels very like uniting rather than singling out, you know, like you're doing something wrong, which is the case. Like anybody knows that, but causes more defiance when you're like, you're doing this wrong, right? Like you don't talk to me that way. Like I get that that's essentially what it is. But I think if you're like in a marriage, just simply being like, we don't talk to each other that way does make it seem more like of a team sort of thing and makes you less likely to get the like defensive, now you're spiraling down the crazy cycle of communication.
I think it's also is more authoritative to say we, because if I say to you, there's a few things I could say, like ways that I could say, don't talk to me like that. It sounds like it makes me come across as weaker, right? Because why do I have to tell you don't talk to me like that, right? Because now I'm trying to like get you. It's almost like you've got me. You're getting me to be on my guard to be like, don't talk to me like that. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Like it's kind of comes across weaker. Or if I say, you don't talk to me like that, again, it comes across as weaker because it feels like a threat, and a threat feels like weak, right? But if I say, we don't talk like that, we don't talk to each other like that, it actually sounds more authoritative because it's more leadership. It's more like I'm the captain of the ship, and this is not what we do on this ship, as opposed to you don't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like it to me, that sounds more strong, has more strength behind it than.
It's definitely a more leading phrase, like, and just saying you don't talk to me like that does seem more like dictator, like the type of situation that women are trying to avoid at all costs. Like it doesn't give leader, it gives you do what I say, which is what women are afraid of. And it doesn't really embody what we preach on here. You know what I mean? I get that you're telling it from a male perspective and like because you don't want men to be walked all over. And I get that. But it's like from a female perspective, like if a man wants to be a leader, then he has to prove that by using the right way to express things. Like telling somebody you don't talk to me that way or things like that, that just is very like all about yourself. Whereas like if you're leading, it's a team. Like you're not leading yourself and another individual, like you're leading our collective unit, if that makes sense. So it does need to be respectful, and it should be coming from a place of teamwork. And how women respond should be the same way as well too. Like she shouldn't be attacking the person that she's with her. And when she has a problem, because I believe that both people should be checked. I think both people should be put in their place.
It's a different,
as what you say. Yeah. But when it's done in a loving and respectful way, it's not putting somebody in their place. It's holding them accountable.
Yeah. And it looks different too, right? And the other thing you could say, right, is you could say, I don't allow people to talk to me like that. Or I'm not going to let you talk to me like that. Or if you talk to me like that, we're not going to be talking, right? Those are still even more, those are still more powerful than you don't talk to me like that. Because trying to control someone else's actions, again, that's where you're crossing their boundary, right? If you're trying to tell someone what they need to do or not do, but if you're saying, hey, we don't do this, or I'm not going to allow this to happen. Right?
I mean, I think even saying I'm not going to allow this to happen, I don't even think you need to say that. I think you could literally just say, I'm not going to continue this conversation until we can have a civil conversation. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Like that's saying I'm not going to continue this conversation. Yeah. That's not even saying like I'm not going to allow this or whatever. That I'm not going to continue until we can talk to each other in a respectful way. And then that's also me saying we, because I also need to talk to you in a respectful way, even though I'm the one that's being respectful right now. Right, that could change at any moment. So that's why I really like the we, because it's not one person's problem. Like it's deep down, it's both of your problems, right? So this is a we problem. It's always going to be a we problem. If there's any sort of problem in your relationship, it's a we problem because you want to fix it so that you can have a better relationship.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, there are times as a leader, you're going to have to say how things need to be or what needs to happen or, you know,
right. I'm not saying that, but I feel like you can say it in a respectful and kind way. Yeah. Because it also does reflect on you if you don't.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, and especially if you're a leader and as a woman following a man's lead, it is scary thing to do to have your life in someone else's hands 100%. And like, even if you trust that person, if he talks to you in a way that isn't loving or feels very like dictatorship, it does cause fear inside of you. And I feel like it makes you more defensive and it pushes you further into the, like, I need to protect myself because he's not protecting me.
Right.
So that's why it is important. If you're in a relationship where the man is leading 100%, like it is your responsibility as a man to do it in the right way. Yeah. And I'm not saying that what you're saying is the wrong way, but I'm just saying that like words are important. Like you don't have to get them 100% right. Obviously, like nobody does. Yeah. But you should at least think about them because you are the leader. Like you don't get to do whatever you want because you're the leader. Like you're still being held accountable. And so, and even though like, as the leader, it should mostly be yourself holding yourself accountable.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that if you are doing this in the wrong way, which I'm not saying that you're giving the wrong examples, but if it's done in a like, you don't talk to me like that, or like you're the one with the problem or whatever, like that's the wrong way. Yeah. And you also need to be held accountable.
Right. Well, yeah. And I guess the frame of reference I'm coming from, because I agree with you, is from a man's frame of reference of understanding, like, look, when you do things like this, right, you actually display a lack of power instead of being powerful, right? Because being powerful never looks like telling people what to do. You tell them what consequences will happen if they do these actions. You tell them what you're going to do. You tell them what we are going to do. You don't tell them what they can or cannot do. You can say, if you do that, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
Or this is what we're going to do. Those are way more powerful because that assumes authority. It assumes that the person is going to listen and follow you. When you say you do this or you don't do this, you're assuming they're not. You're assuming that they can battle you, that there is a conflict, that there is an argument here. Whereas the other ones are assuming, no, this is how it is, right? And so that's That just to give the other context, because I think a lot of guys would be like, well, if she talks to me rude, I can say, don't talk to me like that. And yeah, you can, and you're probably in your rights to do that. I mean, you can make the argument to say that's not even a really bad thing to say, don't talk to me like that. Right. But you're doing it from a weaker position, whereas if you use more strategic words, you're going to come across as more powerful and more respectful at the same time, which is to use that. So anyway,
it's a delicate balance, and that's why I get your perspective of it, because a lot of times it's either one way or the other, right? It's either guys getting walked all over, or now he's flipped it and now he's just being a bossy pants or whatever. You know what I mean? But I think for everybody, if you're coming from a place of love and when you're having a conflict with your partner, you will naturally be more respectful.
Right.
Like, if you remind yourself in that moment, this is my life partner, this is the person I'm going to grow old with. Like, even though I'm upset right now, I love this person more than I've ever loved anybody. Then a lot of times just taking that minute to like think about that will allow you to respond in a better way.
Yeah. And here's one that I give to guys as well, right? Because that perspective I agree with 100%. Imagine you're the most, not even that you're, just imagine the most powerful king in the world sitting on his throne, okay? He's got ultimate power, ultimate money, right? Completely 100% most powerful king that's ever existed, okay? And someone comes into his court, right, before him, and they yell at him or something. Does he say, don't yell at me? He does not say that, right? He might motion to a guard and they're being taken out to the gallows, like something, like, but he's not going to...
He's get his head chopped off just for that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you argue with yell at the most powerful king in the world, I would expect, I mean... Yeah, but that's sidetracking it. Sorry. But what I'm saying is that's how you should act as a man in general. It's like, how would you argue with and I'm not making the comparison that your wife is a peasant, but a peasant that yelled at you. No, you wouldn't even raise an eyebrow. You would not act like, you're not going to allow that to unsettle you, being the most powerful king in the world. Like, think about how that king would act, right? He might...
Right, now he's not going to change his demeanor.
Yeah, he might have them dismissed. He might have some consequence for them or whatever, or he might educate them, right? Because they could do some education, but he's not going to be offended by it. He's not going to be riled up by it. He's not going to be angry. And he's definitely not going to argue with them and say, don't you ever talk to me like that. Right. You see what I'm saying? That's how you can understand what a weak position it is because as men, if you put yourself in the mindset of what would the most powerful king in the world do, how would he act? You're going to act the right way.